Hello and welcome to Find It. We are live tonight on a special episode with some people that I love who are local. So I have Alana Beverly with me, who is also a local podcaster. And we're going to talk to Marty Ford and Mike Throne. They are also here. So what a great night. We are going to talk about why we do what we do, why we started it, what we get from it, and what we hope others get from it. So first of all, Alana, introduce yourself to the people who may not know you.
I'm Alana Beverly, and I am married to Randray Beverly, and we've got 2 kids, Araya, who is 11, and Caleb, who is 7. And I just stay home and work on my podcast and get to do all the fun mom things.
I love it. And you are a great mother and a great friend and a beautiful, bright light in the community. So I'm so happy you're sitting on the sofa with me. And I normally don't do, I've had family here because we're kind of like on top of each other. And this really isn't set up to do it together, but I wanted her here. So here she is. Okay. So Mike and Marty, tell everybody who you are, what you do, starting with, I guess let's start with Marty.
My name is Marty Ford, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Kingston National Bank. And I have about 1 million hobbies. My family, wife Jennifer, and daughter Maddie and Caroline, and they both live in Colorado. So we get to take lots of trips back and forth between Ohio and Colorado to visit. And and I like to hang out with this guy over here.
Yeah,
we're hanging out really closely together too.
Yeah,
we are
usually
too.
across the table from each other. We're not used to this.
But
That's
hey,
funny.
I'm Mike Throne. I'm president and CEO of the Chillicothe Ross Chamber of Commerce. A recovering journalist. Spent about 25 years in newspapers, and I have 5 kids. I have 2 20-year-old daughters, and then 12, 7, and 9 girls, and 1 boy. And basically, my hobbies are doing whatever they do. So.
Yeah,
But
isn't that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And then doing the podcast. So
right, I'm excited to get. I think that people who don't podcast wonder why people do podcast, and I know that it's a thing now where a lot of people listen to them or listen and watch, and to me, it's a resource for people that if each podcast, they're so different, and what you get from them might not fit everybody, but there is a market and a niche and a group that what we do does fit. And so, ladies first. So, I would love to know what inspired you to start your podcast.
Well, it's a long answer, so I will try to cut it down as short as possible.
Take your
Very
time.
long story short, I am adopted, and my parents are older. And so growing up, I was just always with adults because we'd go over to my mom and dad's friends' houses, and their kids were teenagers. And so they were out with their friends and they were out doing things. And so I was with the adults. And the church that I grew up in, there wasn't a lot of kids. And so again, it was a lot of older people. And so I was just always around adults. And so I was always listening to them, and they would share their stories. And I just was fascinated because I think that we can have preconceived ideas of people. And I learned this at a young age because there would be people that others wouldn't like. And then I would sit down and they would tell me stories about being a new mom or being newly married. Or I remember when I was in high school and I just was like, oh, that's why they're like that, or that's why they're passionate about that, or that's whatever. And it just kind of clicked. And so all growing up, I would sit and I would make time to listen to older women and older people and just listen to their stories because I was fascinated. And fast forward, and I remember telling someone at one point, they asked me, what's your dream job? And I was like, to sit and listen to people's stories and drink coffee and get paid for it. And,
That's awesome.
It just seemed like, oh, that'll never happen. Like nothing like that will ever happen. And then I had a friend who wrote a book, and she traveled and did a lot of speaking and interviews and things. And she told me one day, she called me and she said, Alana, I just got to do something and it's literally your dream come true. She had gone down to Texas and was on this podcast, and it was this girl, her name's Jamie Ivy, and she has a podcast, and that's what she does. She interviews people, she hears their stories. They did it over like chips and salsa. And I was like, what? And so I tucked it in my back pocket, and like a year or so later, I started looking into it because it just was like there. And I looked into it, and I talked to someone who was knowledgeable, and it was going to be really expensive. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. And so, but I wrote it down, like, and I actually today, when I was preparing for all of this, I found where I had written it down, and I was like, I have this dream to start a podcast. And so I was really excited. And then I got really discouraged really fast. And I was like, that's not ever going to happen. And so then COVID hit, and one of the gifts that COVID gave to the world was that you have to, everything was online and everything. So people had to figure out how to communicate and do things online. And so resources became a lot more available. And so I looked into a few of them and was like, oh, I think I can do this. And so I checked into it and did my research, and here we are.
And here we are. And we're so glad you did. And, when you talked about finding what you had written, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
You were manifesting it to happen.
Yeah.
And here's the picture of you. The name of your podcast is Pour It Out with Alana Beverly.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, how did you come up with the name?
So that I have to credit to my friend Jade Berry. She owns a shop downtown, and I was in her store one day and I was like, okay, so this is what I want. I want to talk to people. I want to do it over coffee. I want to hear their stories. I need a name. That is not where I'm talented. I'm not gifted in like catchy phrases and titles. And so she just started spitting them out, and I was like, nah. And she said, pour it out. And I was like, I love it. And here's a little, I love the Netflix show Sweet Magnolias, and they do that. It's a group of friends, and they meet every week and they pour it out. And I don't think I'd even told anybody, but it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I would love to do that. Like, I would love to like get together and consistently do that with people. And so it happened.
Oh, that's good. Good job, Jade, coming through.
Yeah.
She's helped me with stuff too. And she also wrote a recommendation for my book. So, she's just a beautiful person too. I want to talk to, okay, so here come the guys, the girls, and we'll get back into everything else. But Mike and Marty, what breathed life into your podcast?
I feel like we both felt very strongly about the great things that are going on in this community and the great things that are happening in the middle of COVID. We had these conversations. We would take walks together during COVID in downtown, and Marty would bug me about doing this podcast, and I thought, there's just really no reason for me to add another thing to my plate. But the more we talked about it, and the more that I missed telling, or at least hearing, other people's stories from when I worked as a journalist. I wasn't doing it anymore, and I still needed that itch scratched a little bit. I feel like that's what we kind of shared as a commonality, to be able to just tell these great stories and have people tell them in their own words without even me, writing it down or things like that. That was more important to us than anything else.
Yeah.
So did you guys, your Feels Like Home, was that started also in 2020?
That was 21, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 21.
21. Well, I just want everyone who can watch, there are people who are also just listening, but can we see the guys with their fancy microphones? Like, I got a fancy light, but Marty hooked me up with a one, and then I gave it,
to me,
forwarded it to her, and then I ended up getting another one and I broke mine. So here we are. Okay. So the name
the podcast support network.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is. So the name of yours feels like home. So do you only interview people who are in Ross County?
Not necessarily. We really focus on the things in our community, and whether that's Chillicothe, Ross County, Southern Ohio. We feel like we have a lot going on in this area, so we're not afraid to highlight anything. But the feels like home, I really felt Mike and I were trying to decide what to name the podcast, and we're both kind of driving to work one day and listening to our buddy Corey Breath's new album, and one of the songs was called "Feels Like Home," and it hit us both at the same time. He's like, "Hey, have you been listening to Corey's new album?" And I'm like, "I think we just discovered the name of the podcast
Oh, it's
because
beautiful.
he has a song called Feels Like Home." I reached out to him and said, "Hey, Mike and I are starting this podcast, and we'd become really good buddies with him." And he's like, "Yeah, use the song. That'd be awesome." And so we had him come on the show, and
That is
but
so
he
cool.
lets us use his song. But it really, I think it struck a chord with us
Yeah.
because one of the things that we loved and connected with was music. Mike and I love to go to concerts together. We're thinking about maybe possibly Friday, but maybe if we can make that work. But anyway, I think that we connected there, and then every time we would go take a walk or we'd go to a concert, we'd have these amazing conversations. And that's why I was pushing Mike. I'm like, more people need to be involved in these conversations. I'm selfish, and I love the fact that like we have them together, but I think that like there are other people we can bring into this conversation and really make an impact. And I don't know if we're making an impact, but we really do love telling stories. So
Yeah,
I
I
love that.
couldn't agree with that more. I will say that the key to that is to make sure that the musician owns the rights to his music.
that's right.
Because if they don't, then it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
got lucky.
We got lucky.
You got lucky. And it's a beautiful entrance. It's a, the name of it, the music, everything is really well done. And I can understand how, I always say if you're trying to select a name or anything else and it hits you and when you're like, I don't know, it's not the one. But when like you did, and right, you interview people in our local area, but really feels like home is for anybody that everyone has a home, everyone has a hometown. And that feeling that you get when you think about what you did growing up, or even your parents and the house you grew up in. It's good. I love that. So I know I get questions myself, like people will ask me, Debbie, why do you want to do a podcast? And you kind of answered it in what you just said. You want to share the stories that you get so much inspiration from, or knowledge, or wisdom, or good vibes from. What is you also wanted to feel a connection with people on a regular basis.
So mine's a faith-based podcast, and I believe that the Lord is faithful. And I just think, through growing up and being around so many people, and I'm also the kind of person, I ask a lot of questions. And, if I ask somebody, hey, how are you? I don't settle for good or fine. I'm always the person who digs a little deeper. That's just
That's
me.
good.
And when I was in college, actually, I had a friend who, those Facebook quizzes that they used to have years ago. And it was like, describe me in one word. And they said inquisitive. And I was like, I was offended because I was like, is that your way of saying I'm nosy or what? Like, I didn't know. But as I got older, I realized like, no, that is me. I ask the questions that a lot of people stay away from. I ask. And so because of that, I've gotten to hear a lot of stories where other people maybe don't dig deep enough to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just was like, I know, there are women in this community that have really powerful stories that need to be told. And so that's why, like, I just wanted to sit down and give them an opportunity to share their stories, because you have the people, like you and like me, who aren't afraid and aren't ashamed, and we'll share and we'll talk, and we are extroverts and we love people. But then there's people that are so quiet and so shy, and you would never know what they've walked through. But because I know them, I'm like, oh my gosh, but if you knew their story, you would know, just you would see a depth that's needed, and hope that's needed. And so that's where my passion came from. And So that's what we do. We talk, and it's just kind of their way of
And you pour it
sharing their
out.
stories.
You pour it out.
Yeah.
And, I can see this is the other thing that I thought of when you were talking about your childhood and how you would be the youngster and everyone was older than you, but people would talk to you as a teenager about being a mother and about different things happening in their lives. So you're obviously a person that people feel comfortable talking to because you genuinely want to know how they're doing. So that's a beautiful thing. You are doing the right thing. I'm so glad that you took the plunge and did it. I think what I would like to say is everyone can do this. Everyone can. Elena is the traffic reporter in the comic books. So hi, Joe. Hi, John. So I feel like I enjoy doing what I do because I also like to learn. I like to learn from other people, their stories, and be inspired and know that, we all have stuff and a path and things that are happening in our life that, like you said, we never know what someone else is going through or what they've gone through and where they are now. And I love those success stories. And for me, even though now, Mike, when you were talking and you said, like, I needed to do one more thing on my plate, and I might have people say to me, Debbie, why are you doing this? You're busy enough. Why would you take time to do this? Well, I feel like an hour a week investing in learning about someone else, and also someone that might catch it on the other side and hear it and say, oh, that resonates with me, and make a difference in someone else's life. I think that's meaningful.
Yeah. And when I was reading back, another side to it is I have a heart for unity, and I believe, in unity. Especially our city is just really special. And that was my heart too, was I wanted, the shy people that don't talk and don't share. You hear their stories, and, because we're a small town. And so you run into people at the grocery store or at soccer practice with your kids or wherever you are. And it's like that person may sit behind you and never say a word, but then you hear them on my podcast and you hear, oh, there's something, oh, they walked through that. I did too. And then you go to practice and you connect with them and you talk to them. And that's where connection happens, and that's where unity happens. And when you hear someone's story, they become human, and that's what I learned at a young age. The older adults, that other people were like, she's mean or she's whatever. Well, I knew a different side of them, and I was like, no, like they're like that because this happened to them, or, and so it humanizes people. And that's, when you feel like you're like, I can relate to her. I didn't know you went through that. Oh, okay. And so either you've gone through it too, you're going through it, or somebody in your family that's going through it, and you can get hope from that person, and you can get perspective from that person, and wisdom and knowledge, or whatever it is, so that was also a part of it too.
Yeah, that's true. What do you guys think about, have you guys ever interviewed someone that gave you some information that shocked you right in the middle of an interview, Mike and Marty?
I don't know that we've had that.
Yeah, I'm not sure shock is.
We pretty much know a lot of the folks that we bring in. I think we were surprised by folks that came to us and said, man, I'm really intimidated by this. I really don't want to do this. I can't believe you talked me into doing it. And then they just knocked it out of the park. I feel like one of our qualities and one of our special gifts is to make people feel comfortable. I'm not here to do gotcha stuff and try to catch people and, things.
Right.
I'm here to help facilitate them telling their story. And for the first maybe 2 seasons or so, it was a lot of trying to take small business owners and have them tell the story of how they got it done. And, that's a very empowering thing for them to talk about, but they're not really used to saying that story to anybody other than the people that are directly around them. And so, you stick a mic in somebody's face, or in your case, put a camera in front of them, and, it gets a little more difficult. And so we just, from the beginning decided that we were going to make it a very relaxed atmosphere. And I think that helps a ton.
Yeah.
And if I can go back just real quick before I forget this thought, you were talking about why do it again, why add something else to your plate. I imagine that if you talk to a lot of my friends and my family, one of the things that I say a lot is we make time for what's important. And you just have to decide when you're getting these things, something gets thrown at you, you've got to decide whether or not it outweighs the other priorities in your life. And I think for us, it became a top priority other than our families and our the things that we do for a living. It became a huge priority for us to do this because, and we went into it and said, look, if we do 5 episodes and nobody listens, then we'll have our answer.
Right.
And then we're starting season 5. So, I think we made time for what was important. We made it important. And now people are making us a priority for themselves. And I guess that's the thing that I'm most honored by, is that something that I've decided that is going to take my time, effort, and energy is now worth somebody else's time, effort, and energy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's really good. You
Thanks.
should put that on a t-shirt.
Thanks. Yeah. All we got to do is get more sponsors for merch.
But Mike's right, though. I mean, we made this little tease about our season 5 starting, and it's just a little 15-20 minute conversation between Mike and I, kind of letting people know what's going to happen. That we really don't know what's going to happen with season 5. We're just kind of along for the ride. But the last few days, I've gotten I don't know how many messages from, "Hey, it's so glad to have you guys back. I can't wait till the first episode." And like that is just super encouraging. And then you realize that it is something that's important to Mike and I, and that it's become important to lots of other people, and then that really makes it worth the time and energy invested into putting something like a podcast or together. So
I love it. You guys sound so good too. Those microphones are bomb.
Well,
but
that's kind of my thing, Debbie. You know that, like,
I do.
Audio is important.
It is, and
I'm auto-tuned actually, so it's all auto-tuning,
just like T-Pain.
Yeah.
You guys, it's all auto-tuned over there. Okay,
Just
but
me. He's got the real voice. I've got the auto-tune. So.
Okay, but you know what? So I hear what you're saying, and it is fulfilling. It is fulfilling for us that get into, I mean, after you get through the terrified time of like, oh my gosh, I'm really doing this. I'm really nervous and I hope it works out. Then you get to that point where you're just like settling in and you think, I don't know, I'm getting something from it. It fulfills me. It makes me feel good to connect with someone and learn from someone and let them have a voice. And that's amazing. But I want to go back to Mike and Marty. When I was on your podcast, I was nervous to go. And I met you guys and I felt really nervous about it. But you did make me feel so comfortable.
Same.
So when you were saying you try to always, I did. Once I got in there and sat down and we talked for a little while before we did it. I was like, oh my gosh, this feels good. Like it feels like home. Here we are. I loved it.
Go.
Yeah, and you're in some, creepy basement in downtown Chillicothe.
Yeah.
So like,
I always give the precursor when we walk down the basement. I'm like, this is an old house. This is a basement.
It's a beautiful home.
It's like Marty's hobby lair down here. So
it's
a
a literal
lair.
cave.
I just can't believe what all you do, Marty. He's a singer. He's a musician. He's a podcaster. He's a marketing director. He's minister. I mean, do you preach? Not preach, but are you a youth pastor? What do you do?
I was a youth pastor for a long time. I'm just a worship leader now at church. I say just.
I was gonna say just. She said that earlier too. She's like, I'm just a housewife. I was like, man, you know how hard it is to be a housewife.
I know what that
is. I couldn't do it. That's why I go to work every day.
Before we came on, we're going to talk a little bit more about podcasts, but do you guys know this? Because it was news to me and you already mentioned it, but before we came on live, we were chit chatting real quick and Alana's adopted, but so is Mike. And so when Mike said he was adopted, I laughed. I was like, I thought he was joking because I just didn't know that. So these guys both on this are adopted. And so Mike, you did you say you met your birth mother?
So no, I haven't met my birth mother. However, so this was like, I think it was 2020. My wife got me Ancestry DNA. And so I let it sit for like 2 months. It was like maybe the middle of February 2020, 21,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. And I did the test and I mailed it in, and I thought, who knows? And then I got an alert saying that it did, that my profile was completely done. And so I went on, and sure enough, there was somebody listed there. And I thought, well, that's interesting for my birth mother, but it didn't have anything for my father. And so I went ahead and just kind of waited to see what was going to happen, because my biggest fear was, I don't want to throw somebody's life into chaos. Like if they have kids and everything else, like it to me, that would just feel intrusive at that point. I guess in a way, she put her information in there and she put her DNA in there too.
Oh yeah.
But a couple months later, maybe about 6 weeks later, she reached out to me, lives in Massachusetts and so we just started having conversations at first through the messaging feature on the DNA site. And then we swapped Facebook info and then emails, and we haven't talked on the phone or anything, but we talk a lot via messaging and things like that. So
what did that feel like to you when you first texted or communicated and you got a response?
Yeah, she reached out to me first, and she said, I'm your birth mother. If you want to keep conversation going, let's do that. But if you don't, I understand. And in all honesty, I had to take a step back and say, is this really something that I want to do? Once I reconciled with my own self that I wasn't going to be jumping in somebody's family situation and so on, that it became a little easier. And she never had any other children. Her husband had passed away about 3 or 4 years earlier, and so I feel like it was God's timing that brought us together, and so we continue to have conversations. And I feel like every time I get close to saying, all right, let's just go ahead and meet, something happens or life gets busy, and I just kind of pull back from it. But I think it's going to happen at some point in time for sure.
Oh, I'm feeling it. Do you, since you've had Facebook profiles, since you're friends on there, and you've seen her picture then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you see yourself in her?
Yeah, a little bit. It's funny. I had sought my birth records when my son was born. He'll be 13 in December. When my son was born, I thought, man, I really don't know much about my health history.
True.
And so you could do two things in the state of Connecticut, because that's where I was born. You could either ask for all revealing information or just health. At the time, I just really wasn't up to doing it all. Plus, it was more expensive. So I was like, practically, I'm going to say, let's just get the health records. When I got the health records, it had everything from my mom's side, nothing from my father's side. And so it just kind of like, felt to me like that's as much as you need. But then the relationship that we've gotten, I think since then, is just, it's not the type of thing where I'm like, wow. I mean, I'm gleaning tons of things from her. I think we're getting to know each other, and that's been really cool.
That is. And so, Alana, you have not.
I have not. Mine is a little different because I was born in India, and it's a lot harder I was in an orphanage, and we don't have any information. And so I don't have a birth certificate. I have an adoption certificate. And so there's a lot. I don't know even my exact birth date. And so I was adopted at 14 months. And so the first 14 months of my life, there's no information. Like, we don't know anything.
When do you celebrate your birthday?
So I would have to ask my parents. I don't know for sure how they got this date. I think they knew it was around that time. But it's April 28th. And so I joke with people because I celebrate all month, and I'm like,
of course,
listen, we don't know like when the actual date is anyway. So we're just going to do it all month.
think we'll do it all year. It's a 12-month birthday. We're going to figure it out as we go. I love that. But then, so how did I didn't know that the podcast was going to go this way, but I do want to know this. I know all the
Marty,
listeners
take a
wanna
break,
know this.
okay?
How did your parents how did they find you in India?
So what's interesting, if you see a picture of me with my parents, you wouldn't believe that I'm adopted because I look just like them. And so my mom was born in India and she was raised in India. She came here for grad school and then started working here and stayed, met my dad, and my dad's born and raised in Chillicothe.
Wow.
And so,
That's wow.
yeah. So when they put in, they decided that they were going to adopt. They wanted to adopt from India because that's where she was from.
Oh my
And
gosh, you guys.
so they put in and they wanted a little girl around, a year old or so. And mine was the first packet that they got. And they were like, yeah, we want her.
Oh my gosh, that gives me chills. I love that story.
Yeah.
I bet they think, what a gift.
Well, they should.
Of course. Of course they should. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. See what podcasts can do?
Mm-hmm.
So we may have listeners on here who are adopted as well and don't know whether they want to go forward with finding their birth mother, but you're fine with some people are fine with not finding it. But I do agree with you, Mike. It's important to know health history. So you know what to expect and how to treat yourself. When you go to the doctor, they want to know, does any of these diseases run in your family? And when you're adopted and you don't have that knowledge, that would be tough.
You say no. And so, and I will say, I think, I had great parents. I had fantastic parents and home life and all of the things. But I think anybody who's adopted, there is a deep down, I would love to know that.
Yeah.
I would love to know, there's that whole, I'm a psychology major. So there's the whole nature nurture. And it's like, you want to know. I can see traits that I got from my parents and how I act. And I act a lot like my dad in some ways and a lot like my mom in some ways. But then there's the nature part where I'm sure that like when you see your mom and stuff, you can see like, oh, that facial expression, I got that from her. Or, oh, this thing I got from her. And I have a friend who recently, I have a podcast coming out in a few weeks about this. She didn't know she was adopted until she was a grown adult.
Oh.
And when she found out, it worked out and she ended up meeting her birth mom. And when she met her, it was just like, oh my gosh, like I got this from you. I got this from you. And so I think anybody, I can't speak for all people, of course, but I would venture to say that if you're adopted, there's a part of you that has that. Like, well, I would love to know. I would love to know, what you look like and all the things. So I love that. Like when you said that you connected with her, that's amazing. And so I did the whole Ancestry DNA and the 23andMe. I did both. But like I said, it's a little more far-fetched for me because it's international. And so the chances of people filling it out and things all the way over there is completely different.
It would be. Mike, look, Marty's like, I'm just a prop with a good microphone. But I do want to did your mom ever talk about your dad?
So I did ask a couple times.
Yeah.
And really didn't get much of an answer. So I just kind of felt like maybe that was something that was more of if we meet and it's a face-to-face conversation, you can get that thing. It was obvious that it was not a relationship. Let's put it that way. Like that stuck for sure. And so I don't even know if maybe she ever told him, so it's one of those things where, it was 1968 and, she's a very strong Catholic and, back then there was no really alternatives. And so, I'm thankful that I ended up here. I'm thankful that I ended up getting with a family that brought me to Ohio because I love it here. And, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to go out and fulfill my dreams. My adoptive parents were, like she said, I was really.
Aww, Kelsey.
Oh my gosh.
He still likes you.
Yeah, that's nice. We got in a fight a couple days ago too. So that's really nice of her to say. So,
that's
but
cute.
yeah, I think, you know, I've been super grateful for the opportunities that I've had in my life. And obviously the biggest thing for me, was that, my parents loved me and cared for me, and they never gave me everything, but they certainly made me work and learn. And that's great. And now, I have somebody else that I can work and learn with, so.
Mhm. Well, Kelsey says you do dishes, so that's why she's keeping
So
you
you
Sure.
are.
around. No, I'm kidding. Kelsey, he does the dishes. That's good news. Okay, so do you guys think it's better? And Marty, pipe in on this. Not that we're adopted, but we have an opinion. Do you think it's better if you adopt a child to let them know in the beginning as they're growing up, or not to say anything until they're an adult? What about you? Did you always know?
They told me I was in like first grade, I think. I remember it's one of those things. I remember the conversation. I can tell you exactly where we were. I can tell you how it went. But I was old enough to have a memory, but young enough to where, yeah, I just always knew.
So it was like just part of you, like you always
Yeah.
kind of felt like you knew. Mike, did you always know?
Yeah, I've always known. My parents, even when I was young, talked about the fact that, my birth mother loved me enough to let me be raised by somebody that could do it, and
Provide.
that felt like they were prepared for it. So
I
that,
like
that
that.
part was good.
Yeah,
So
that would
my
be my
2
opinion
cents.
too.
What do you
Yeah.
think? Yeah, 2 cents worth. Like if you adopted a child, I almost feel like I would want them it always to be part of their life instead of like a shock when they get older. But I can understand why parents who adopt are afraid of
Yeah.
maybe having the child react and feel like it's not valuable because or feeling lack because their biological parent gave them up. But I think if I had to choose between the two, me personally, I would have told my kids young instead of older. But I do know people who weren't told until they were an adult, and then they were completely shell shocked.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I
Well,
think
and I will say
as a
my parents, they told me, but then it was kind the opposite, not opposite, but a little different from Mike. We didn't talk about it. We had that one conversation
And
and
it
then
was
that was kind of
done.
it.
yeah.
I know I have friends now who, have adopted, and I love that they'll do like a gotcha day and they'll celebrate the day that, they
Oh,
became a part of the family. And
the
then
gotcha day.
they have the birthday, and on the birthday they'll honor the birth mom, and they'll
Oh,
go through the whole, she loved you so much to give you up, and she was the one who carried you, in her womb, and we get to be the ones to carry you in our heart, all the
yeah.
things. But then they celebrate the gotcha day of like, this is when you became a part of our
Wow,
family.
that's cool.
And
I love that.
so I love that. Like, I love when
Mike,
parents
do you get a
that.
gotcha day?
So I was literally adopted at birth. So
Oh,
I guess it's all the same,
Oh, so they were there. They had already knew that this. Wow, that's
Yeah, and I don't
impressive.
know all the circumstances behind that. That could have been one of those things that was negotiated before.
Sure.
It's hard to know, but
And that's done a lot now.
yeah.
So
yeah,
that your parents and your birth mother, they were way ahead of the time doing it that way
Yeah.
back then. But I do know that there are women who cannot have children on their own, but are nurturing and
Mhm.
loving and make the best parents
Mhm.
ever. And what a blessing
Mhm.
when a mom knows I can't physically, mentally, whatever, take care of this child and has the child anyway. And what a gift
Yeah.
for women who
Yeah.
can't have. So I love that story. I love those stories. Thanks for sharing. Mike, do you have any? Okay, I want to tell, or not Mike, Marty. I wanted to tell you guys when I asked you the question, has anything ever kind of shocked you during an interview? So Joe Ingram was on here, and he is hilarious. Like, he makes me laugh. He's called the sales genius. He lives out in California, and I've known him for a few years, and he's hilarious. He's very successful and all that. And when he was on my podcast, he started talking about his childhood, and I was like, and so I'm like, okay, like shocking stuff. And I'm like, okay, so it's kind of true. Like sometimes the funniest people
Mhm.
have learned to be funny because it helps them get through the hard times.
Mhm.
So I was just that happened with me, and I wasn't like trying to really pry. It just came up in conversation, and I was just like, I didn't even know how to respond. I was like, "Oh, you're the funny guy who then, he's hilarious." But anyway,
Yeah, I don't think
I
we've had any shocking things, but I think we can look back at certain episodes that
yeah.
are moments where we leveled up
Mhm.
from a podcast standpoint,
Yeah.
and we really like broke through some things. I go back to when John Gabus was on
Yeah.
our podcast in season 1, and just a special episode with him. And just some special things happened. How he cared for my dad when my mom died, and I got a chance to finally thank him for that after 10 or 11 years.
Wow.
And think just things like that. And we've had when Ben Hartsock came on,
Yeah.
it was a really just a great episode because Mike and I are such sports guys, and so it was fun. But I felt like we've had these moments, so maybe not shocking moments where people have told us stories that really surprised us, but it was really we've had surprising moments where I just feel like coming out of that podcast, our podcast was at a different place. And it was because we had just amazing guests that shared an amazing story, and we really got to connect with them, and then our listeners got to connect with them. So yeah,
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I know, and I think that how exciting that you had Ben Hartsock on,
Mhm.
and he is a local guy, and he has done great things, and he's also a faithful guy and a family man, and that's amazing. How many episodes have you guys had? So you've had seasons, and then how many episodes do your seasons have?
So we go about 20 episodes per season. There might be one-offs in there somewhere. We've done a couple things where like one season we did an interview with Lori Graves, and then after we were done, we had been talking about TV sitcoms, and so we did a special bonus episode where we just sat down afterwards and talked about our favorite sitcoms, which was absolutely fascinating.
one of my favorites.
And yeah, I mean, it
Wait,
really was.
what is? Tell me what your favorite sitcoms were growing up.
We just went through all kinds of them that like impacted us as kids.
Yeah.
So like the facts of life, going back to the 80s. What's
I was a big MASH kid.
Yeah.
I
Oh, I
was
hated that
from
too.
12 and
Carnage.
13, and then I loved Cheers, and
Yeah.
Seinfeld was a big one for me.
Yeah, for me too.
More recently, I've really been into Schitt's Creek and a couple others
Yeah,
that
you were a
you
big
know,
Office guy.
I'm a big Office guy. So like Parks
Yeah,
and Recreation.
funny.
So
Oh man, you can rattle them off. Well, this is a funny story. When Seinfeld first started, David said, "Oh man, this show's not going anywhere." And then it became huge, and I'm like, okay, so don't quit your day job. You're definitely not going to be a critic for what sitcoms are going to go. And I think he did the same thing with Friends. I'm like, you do not have a nose for what's good on here. I
That's
loved
funny.
Friends too. It was just fun to see the camaraderie, the
Mhm.
different personalities, and how they intermingled. So that's fun. That is fun to talk about. And now they're on repeat. And oh, by the way, as far as music goes, 80s rock bands still rock, and my kids listen to them. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying." I'm
mine
like,
do not, and they have rebelled, and I've decided that they're out of the will. So
that's awesome. Well, who do you guys have coming on your show next?
well,
Who
we're
do
going to be doing quite a bit with the World Heritage designation.
I'm so pumped
We
about
actually, Chris Alford and Brett Ruby, who were part of the actual delegation from here that
Mhm.
Went to Saudi
that
Arabia.
went to Saudi, they're going to be on. In fact, they had to cancel because one of them was sick this week. And honestly, we want to bring Melody Young on and have her talk about that process and all the things that we have to do now. So that's a really big part of what we're going to do to start the season. And in all honesty, like Marty's part of the Friends of Hopewell group. Obviously, what I do with the chamber, I'm also on the Convention Visitors Board. So we've been pretty intimately involved in this whole thing. And
For people who don't know, for people who don't understand what's going on. And Mike, remember we were together at the Visitors Bureau presentation. You modeled my scarf, remember?
I did. That was
I just loved it.
an epic moment for me, for sure.
He owned it. But tell people in our community who may not already know the big news, what it is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the greatest part about it is that it's just centered on Chillicothe. So we have the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks, which includes sites in Newark and Chillicothe, and then near Lebanon, and all of them were burial sites for the Hopewell Indians, who were very prominent in our area, hundreds of years ago, right? So the really cool thing about it is we've done a good job of preserving most of these sites or recreating most of these sites. And so the World Heritage Group, or World Heritage Local Group, started on this process like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But in the last 15 years, it's really picked up speed. And what you have to do is you have to apply to the United States. I don't want to say chapter, but basically the equivalent of UNESCO, which is the United Nations World Heritage Group.
Right.
You have to apply to that US group first. They have to approve you, and then you can move to be considered on the World Heritage Site. And so we were approved by the US 3 or 4 years ago, I think, maybe longer than that.
Yeah.
And then this year we were voted upon at the UNESCO conference just a couple of weeks ago, and we were approved, and it felt like it felt like the end of one thing, but then the beginning of another bigger
it's
thing.
now the real
So-
work. The work starts, and it's going to bring in so many travel or tourism into our community.
Yeah.
And I think of all the sites through I know for sure in Ohio we have the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's the largest collection of Hopewell earthworks in the entire world.
Right.
And so I think the really incredible thing about it is we expect our visitors to double next year, and then continue to double each and every year for 5 years.
Exactly.
That's just a conservative estimate, really, on what we think is going to happen. So,
And they've got data to back that up with other
Mhm.
World Heritage sites and how their attendance is
and
increased.
similar to ours, because the last site in America to be done was Cohica over by St. Louis, and that's what happened there. They doubled, and doubled, and so it's going to be huge for our community. It's going to be huge for the hotels and for the restaurants, and we've got a great array of things to see here and all through Ohio, from Newark all the way down. But I'm happy to send all those people from hotels in Chillicothe to Newark and to Lebanon, and then they can all come back here.
That's right.
I'm happy to do that.
I mean, I'm really excited about it. When I got the news that it had for sure been approved, and I was just elated because I know there's so much work behind it, and to get it accepted and to be that, it's amazing. So who are you going to have on next, or who have you just had, or whatever?
I have one coming out tomorrow, and it is with Melissa Stacy. Do you know Timmy Stacy?
Do I know? I'm really bad with names. I never forget a face, but I'm bad with names. I don't think so.
They both actually were in addiction, and I actually don't know a whole lot of his story, but it's her story, and it is amazing.
They came out the other side, obviously.
Yes. And we recorded it back in July. It was the end of July when we recorded it. And I was listening to it today to just kind of refresh myself and stuff, because it's been a while. And I just was like, oh my gosh, it is amazing.
Well, it's always good to hear when a success story of someone coming out of drug addiction.
Yeah.
And we need that so much for people who are trying to get out of it. And especially for family members who are struggling to have hope for their people who may be struggling with addiction that's running rampant in this area and across the United States.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. And that'll be on tomorrow. And I want our audience, we're about ready to wrap up. But I'll ask one more question of you guys. But as you look, if you are listening, it's alanabeverly.com. You can find her, Pour It Out, and you can find Feels Like Home Pod on Facebook, and follow them and listen to the people that they have on and learn from those people and be inspired. I just am really impressed with with your podcasts, all of your podcasts. And I've learned a lot from, I mean, you're a support system. And I just want everybody to know, I got the nicest message about me starting and I launched my new, boutique in my basement, online boutique. But I got this nice and most encouraging message from Alana, and we also support one another as podcasters. And I love what you do, and we need more of you. And then, of course, Mike and Marty. I mean, what isn't there to love? The voices, the personalities, and I do. I mean, I love you guys. We're all part of the same community, and we support one another. I mean, Marty gave me my first microphone and helped me. Like, he's like, use it and whatever. And then I forwarded it on to you, and he kept sharing the love, paying it forward. So that's good to know, right? This community and us.
It is. And I want to say something real quick, if I can.
Sure, absolutely.
To that end, I was thinking through different things, getting ready for tonight. And I realized like all three of you contributed to me. And when I first started, when I did that photo shoot with a friend, because in my mind, I was going to launch a podcast and a website all at the same time. And I realized that was dumb. And so that didn't happen. But I had done a photo shoot before I started the podcast. And Mike actually gave the microphone to use as a prop in that. And then a friend of mine had told me, I was like, I know nothing tech wise. She was like, you need to talk to Marty Ford. He's a genius at all.
He's a genius.
And so
you hear that, Marty? I hope Jennifer's listening. Do you know you're married to a genius?
She'll knock me down pretty quick.
Let me bring you back down.
But we met. I sent him a message and said, hey, can we meet? I've got a few questions for you. And I think we sat in roast for over 2 hours. Aww. And I went in to ask about microphones and what do I need and what don't I need? Because if you just get on Amazon, it's so overwhelming. And he walked me through like highs and lows of podcasting. This is what to expect. If this happens, don't be discouraged. This is what we've experienced. This is what's worked. This what didn't work. And then when I asked about microphones, he said, well, I have some. You can just use them. And I was like, I can't do that. And he said, no, he was like, because that way, if you get going and you realize you hate it, you're not out anything. And I was so blown away. And then he said to me, well, you're like a week too late, because I just gave a really nice microphone to Debbie Bettendorf. And I was like, are you kidding? And so then like a week or two later, I ran into you at the restaurant, and you asked me how it was going. And somehow Marty came up, and I said, yeah, he said you said he gave me a microphone. And I was like, I know, I was like a week late. And you said, well, I'm not using it. I'll just give it to you. And no joke, like it was on my front porch before I even got home from lunch. And so I was thinking about that tonight. And I just was like, I think it is important for people to know, like, it's not just a show that we're doing tonight. Like, these people, like, you've supported me from day one in your own way. And having me on your guys' show and having me on your show tonight, like, I love Chillicothe. It's one of those things where I'm like, I love our community. I love that we have people that I didn't know any of you super well, just enough to be connected somewhat. And it was like none of you hesitated to be like, yeah, sure, here's what I have. Let me help.
Well, I got to say this, that made me emotional, because we all, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm also menopausal, so get over it, Debbie. But I met you for the first time face to face when you worked for Kathy Dressback. And I liked you right away. You have a good energy. You just are a good girl. I mean, you can tell there's a light in you, and it just warms my heart. So of course I'm going to support you 100%. And there's no competition here either. No. That's another thing. I've had people ask me, well, what about all the other people that do it? Well, who cares? It doesn't matter. We're all part of this community together, and our audiences can sometimes be the same and sometimes different. But I want you all to know that everyone that's listening tonight, I hope they follow you and they listen to your podcast and the people that you have on. There's so much value that you all bring to my life. And I want everyone who follows me to also follow you. Yeah. And you, because it's so worthwhile. Oh, I love this whole show. Well, we love you, Jennifer.
Yes, we do.
Jen Valentine. I didn't see you at boxing, girlfriend.
Oh man,
All right.
putting it out there.
Call
Wow,
Up.
calling them out.
Calling
Sorry,
them out. I
Jennifer.
know. She's like, well, I don't love you. I don't love this podcast now.
I don't love it anymore.
I don't love it
No,
anmore.
she's going to take that
Yeah,
back.
just know that Mike and I
She's
didn't
like,
call you
never
out.
mind,
It was
Debbie.
That's right. Yeah.
She's probably out traveling. She works a little tail end off. She really does for work. So yeah, wow. Okay, so Team Chillicothe, yay, Trish Harp. Okay, Macy Hi, question. How much time does it actually take you all to record and produce your podcast? Well, Macy, I just do it. I don't do any editing. It's like what you see is what you get. It's live. Okay, so how do you guys do it?
It depends for me. Now today, so I normally record either at my dining room table, or I've been using a family friend's kitchen this past summer because my kids were home. And but with Melissa, they've got 2 little girls, and so I went to her house because we just could not coordinate schedules. And so we had 2 little toddler girls everywhere. And so I had to edit a little bit.
Yeah.
And so editing that today to get it all put together, it probably took, I ask for 2 hours when I interview people, just because we talk a little bit before and a little bit after. And then normally it'll take about an hour for me to get everything together and post it and everything. Today, it took me about 2 hours to get it all done. So
yeah. And it's the only thing. Okay. So what about you? You two, how long does it take you to?
This one's really easy for me. I show up and talk.
Mike's like, I roll in and I talk. I have
leaves.
my cute microphone, and then Marty does the edits.
Marty stays and edits like after. He does hardcore editing.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Mike is he is the epitome of a professional, because I don't really have to do a whole lot of editing. We come in, we have a little bit of small talk, and it depends on the person. Some people, Mike, we obviously know that they're comfortable in front of the mic. They jump right into the conversation, and we go. And basically I clip a little bit off the front and a little bit off the back, and very little do I delete. We've had just maybe 2 moments where we're like, we probably need to go delete that. Where we said something.
I'm not sure.
No, nothing like that. It was more
No, we've
like,
been wanting to get that little E sometimes.
yeah, we haven't had the chance. We haven't had the chance to mark the explicit.
We wanted that pretty badly, actually.
Is this safe for kids? But
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
So I probably have about an hour, just tagging it, making sure, we have a sponsor, so we make sure that the sponsor gets highlighted, and then after we're done talking with the guest and they leave, Mike or I usually sit down and record a little intro just to kind of open it up so people know what's coming in the episode. So yeah, I've gotten pretty efficient at it. I mean, I can usually knock it out pretty quick. But yeah, it does. I think we did a lot of work up front early on so that we don't have to do a lot of work now.
Yeah.
So we can just kind of sit down, hit the record button and go, and then push it out to the web and all of our
so
people.
it is, I mean, just getting things set up and ready to go in the beginning, Macy, to answer your question, there's that setup and also getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
That just like you probably didn't launch yours until much later because you needed to just do it.
Yeah.
And so if I'm encouraging anybody who, if you have something to say and you have people you want to bring on and start your own podcast, do it. Ask somebody. I mean, like we all get information from one another and share. Obviously, Marty is good. Thanks for all the feedback. I've been considering one now for years. Content ideas are there. Just need help getting focused and started. Will you go, girl? Macy Power with a name like that.
Yes.
The biggest thing that I can tell you. Biggest thing that I'll tell you is trick yourself, because we did this. We released 3 the first week, and we thought we were the kings of podcasting because we're like, look at all these downloads, we rock. And then we're like, oh, well, like 6 episodes later, we were like, oh yeah, the reason why we had so many downloads the first week is because we released 3, but we tricked ourselves. So do that, and then you'll think you're awesome, and you'll just keep doing it.
And you know what? Think you're awesome anyway, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, why
even
not?
if it's you and a lot of times I get a lot of people live, but I get a lot of people that watch it on repeat. Once you do these, Macy, they're out there for anybody to pick up. It could be a year or 2 later that you're making impacts as people catch it and find it find it on replay. So, just don't get discouraged, because I've been there. I thought, oh my gosh, but then I thought, wait a minute. Why am I doing it? I love it.
Yeah.
I'm getting value
Yeah.
from it. I'm
Right.
learning and I'm growing as a person, and I get to hear someone else's story. What a beautiful thing. So I so appreciate you guys. This was an 11th hour idea to have them on. I wasn't going to have a podcast tonight, and I called you guys and you came through again, as always. And so I appreciate it. Any parting words that that you want to tell this crowd? You're welcome, Macy. But Macy Power, you should have the Power podcast. I'd listen just for the name, the Power podcast. So anything you would like to say to this crowd?
I would. I think, like I said, I've said it a few different times, but we have an incredible city, and my podcast is focused around Chillicothe.
It sure is.
The stories from the women in our town. I also once a month bring on a pastor and sit down and talk, because I think, when you go to church, it's very common for you to only listen to your pastor and to only know what they think and what they preach. And there is a strength in that. But I am over the National Day of Prayer here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've gotten to know pastors in our community over the years, and we've got incredible pastors here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to give them an opportunity to share their heart, and for other people to hear, oh my gosh, like my friends may go over at that church, but I got to hear their pastor and he's amazing.
Yeah.
And or
That's
people
awesome.
who don't go to church at all, that, they know this is where I don't really fit. I don't really think I want to go there. But then they hear a pastor on the podcast and go, oh, I like what they have to say. I think I'm going to go check them out.
That's a great idea.
And so I want to say that, like, we have, if you don't know, we have incredible people in our community, and everybody has a story. And if you have a story, everybody has a story, and just know, whether yours is as, intense and powerful as coming out of addiction, or whatever, or just a simple, I was born and raised in Chillicothe, and, my story's simple. The Lord is always doing a work. And so it may be, I was adopted from India and he brought me here. And so that is a big story. But your story is important. And, all of our stories are important. And so it's an honor to be able to share that, and to be able to share the people of our town.
I love that. And I think that's great. And I do, from all over, I do like bringing new people into our community too. I have had people from town, but I do like to learn from other people in different areas, and it's fun. I mean, we all have a different flavor to what we offer and provide. So final words, Mike and Marty.
Well, from the podcast side of things, anytime somebody asks me, and Mike and I both get it a lot, how do you start a podcast? Or, they ask for help. And my answer is always just hit the record button. Don't get caught up in having fancy microphones. We have these because I already own them. Like, I have a band, and
you're
we
techy.
had gear.
I mean, you do that.
And it's what I love to do, right? But you can record a podcast, and there are lots of great podcasts that it's just somebody with their iPhone and they hit record on the voice recorder and talk into it. Just hit the record button and try to connect with people. And that's the biggest thing I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that as well, because I mean, it's easy for me because I show up and talk, but at the same time, like, that's really all you have to do. You can get better at doing the audio. You can get fancy board or nice mics if you want, but you don't have to do those things to have a really good podcast. I mean, I know people that are in this community that get on and they just rap with each other, and they just have, a couple of regular mics and a computer.
Yeah.
And, they have a blast doing it, and they have an audience, and I'm happy they do. It's been great to do this thing because I got to do it with a great friend, and we get to talk about a great community. So, we're going to keep doing that for a while. And when it's done, it's done. And then if it doesn't end, then one day we'll be sitting around in a nursing home with 3 marbles rattling around, and people will be like, why are they just talking to each other over and over again? Like, well, that's what they've been doing for 50 years.
Oh my God, I just thought of something.
Season 85.
Instead of Marty and Mike feels like home, it's Marty and Mike at the home.
At the home, yeah.
Oh my God.
All right, write it down. We'll get a copyright it tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'll get the
feels
website.
like home at the home. All right. The nursing home. Oh, people. Oh, hey, Julie. I see
Julie.
some people coming in. So listen, that was very encouraging, Marty, especially when you said, just hit the button, just record, just go, just do it. So especially if you're a person who, like us, who love to hear other people's stories and really want to invest in that and let people have a voice, even if you want to have a podcast just with you talking to people because you want to use your voice, like Marty said, just hit that record button and do it. That's encouraging.
One more thing.
Yes, I love it. Yay.
Just on the podcast place, because Marty told me that was the first thing out of his mouth when I asked him. And also I would just add, be yourself, because it is very easy. I follow a lot of podcasters and I listen to podcasters that have been doing it for 10 years. And so it was overwhelming to me in the beginning because I was like, but they are so professional and they are so whatever. And I don't have any of that. And that was one of the things that he said, don't worry about that. Just hit record and be you. And, earlier you were talking about how there's no competition, and it's because we all have different personalities. So we can have the same people on our podcast, but you're going to get a completely different side of them than what I would get and what they would get. And so, just if it is something that you are going to go after, be genuine, let it. I do not on video. This is why I don't do video because they just show up in sweats, no makeup. Like, we get coffee and I bring coffee from Roast and we just sit down and we talk, and it's informal and it's not showy and it's not professional. It's just, it's having a coffee date and it's talking. And so
I love that.
That's what Mike does every week. No makeup.
Mike comes in. I've got sweatpants
and
on.
Trust me, if there's a person that needs makeup, it's me. So
I was thinking that, like, a little blush.
I got these
but
circles.
I walked into theirs,
these
and
dark
it is.
circles
So
under
you
my
walk
eyes.
in, they've got that big table, and it's so professional. And I was like, oh my gosh,
I
have a
the
little
same
microphone
thing.
in my laptop.
I was like,
we should turn the camera around, let them see the rest of this room.
Yeah, how I've got it set up for this. It's crazy.
I was just like, this is a whole thing down here. Like, this is going on. Like, wow. Jason, hey, podcasters. Jason Gillum is also a podcaster. No offense that you're not on here, Jason. You can come on anytime you want. But anyway, I just thought, you know what? Let's talk about what we do, why we do it. And I love I know your heart and I know theirs and I understand, but I just wanted to put it out there and also encourage other people to do the same thing. If you need, hey, I'll put Marty's phone number. You need help? No, I'm teasing.
You can call
it's
me.
740. If anybody needs any help, call Marty. No, we're available.
Listen, I'm easy to find. Don't worry. People find me. It's okay.
Yeah, people know where you are. When are you going to be on stage next, Marty? When are you going to be singing?
Oh gosh.
Well, Sunday.
Oh yeah, I sing every Sunday. But so real quick, I don't want to derail things, but I got invited to sit in on a rehearsal last night in Chillicothe at the intermediate school. A bunch of band people are gathering on Tuesdays, and they're playing like big band orchestra stuff.
Really?
Like old school jazz standards.
Where?
They're just rehearsing. And so a couple people I know are part of that band, and they're like, "Hey, you need to come check it out." And if I can figure out how to sing in front of them, like Frank Sinatra, Harry Connick Jr. style, that's going to happen. So
can you can you go me and do one little line of something right now, Marty?
Oh my gosh, Debbie, are you kidding me? So since I did that last night, they were playing. I mean, they were amazing. The band is really, really good. And so, but I've been listening to like classic jazz stuff, like big band stuff from like the 30s, 40s, Glenn Miller, but I was listening to a bunch of Harry Connick Jr. So
How does it sound again? Give me a little.
What Harry Connick Jr.? You don't know who Harry Connick Jr. is?
Yeah, I do.
She knows.
I know you so well. I can tell by the sound of your voice that it's really in love with me. And you are.
I am.
Yes,
I love
you
this.
are.
I'm swooning right now.
Don't I can't go. I'm
Look.
not gonna do that.
What did that sounded so good, and that was just like
We-
right off the cuff.
We should have done
so
that at
good.
the
He
beginning
has-
because the viewers just would have skyrocketed.
Well, like right now, sing us something else. Just one line.
No. That was enough. But if I get a
man
chance
has-
to sing, you're going to know about it if I get a chance to sing in
That's
front of
right.
this band.
Okay,
So-
the other producer that's also a podcaster, my podcasts are only an hour. What's up here?
I just looked. It's
This is an
been
hour and 10
longer.
minutes, dude.
My producer in the back. Look how bossy.
You're
I
paying her
paid to be a
overtime right
producer
now.
over here.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, she's also a podcaster of a lot of different podcasts.
Here comes
Over
Finn.
550, but
people
who's
are loving
counting?
this. People are like me. I'm like,
I'm loving
Jesus,
it.
we should have wore pajamas.
I
We just did it. We're doing a slumber party all nighter podcast. Lynn's like, I'm tapping out on that. All right.
This has
Well,
been great, you guys. You really.
I know. And
This has
it's
been
so
great.
amazing. We have such good people here,
Yeah.
and they, feels like home and pour it out. Both podcasts really feature very
Look
well.
at his doggy.
All
It's Finn.
yay. Really good people in our area, and they all do have stories, and it is fun to listen, and it is like people you don't think have that story. Like, I didn't even know you guys were adopted. I just found out now, so here we have it. But anyway, I love you guys all, and thanks to everyone who's on here and has been listening, and everyone who comes on replay. And I will see you all again next Wednesday. And don't forget to continue to find it. What? I don't know. Whatever you're seeking, I hope you find it. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks so
Bye.
much,
bless.
everybody.
that floats around me.